What do mold, gluten, glyphosate, other pesticides and herbicides, and other chemicals in our environment have in common? Well, they can all impact our physical health, and they can all impact our mental health as well. Welcome to Mental Fortress Monday. I'm Dr. Cheryl Carthouse, naturopathic doctor, and here on Mental Fortress Monday, we explore the who, what, where, when, why, and how of mindfulness and mindfulness-based practices, and what we can do to ultimately better our quality of life and better our ability to sustain stress. Now, in this endeavor, we ultimately have to also take into consideration all of the things that impact our physical health as well as our mental health. And it is too often that I hear people tell me that they have pushed through in order to try and overcome different physical symptoms in order to just persevere or achieve something or maintain the status quo of how they're doing. And when we push through those things, we often miss these huge signals that our body is giving us. It is a gift that these symptoms come up, that we can understand and start to learn that something is not going as well as it needs to, not going as well as it should. And it could be other environmental factors that are actually impacting us. We can actually do different tests to test for molds and to test for different chemicals, and to test to see how your mitochondria function is actually doing. Your mitochondria, that what makes your energy and makes your little currency of ATP and goes around and gives it to all of the cells, or the cells produce it themselves. It makes our muscles work. It makes our eyes blink. It makes our mouths chew. It makes our respiration happen and our lungs to breathe. And without that ability, we don't function very well. There are also different things that the mitochondria do, which are to give a signal that the cell should die if it is not in good health. And without that, we progress to different diseases. So we want all of these things to function well. But also because things like mold and gluten, glyphosate, other pesticides, and other chemicals in our environment also can cause anxiety and depression and brain fog and fatigue. How many of us have even a few of those? And when it gets to a particular extent, or if a person has a particular susceptibility, it can actually cause or worsen bipolar, even hallucinations and schizophrenia. Often there may be other physical symptoms that come along with these as well, like numbness or a different kind of feeling in our hands or in our body somewhere else, or sort of these electrical shock kinds of things. But we don't necessarily have to have all of these other symptoms for there to be something wrong. Sometimes it's actually just cognitive or mental, and our brains just are not functioning as well as they need to because of all of the physical things that are going on in our body. And so we want to pay attention to that, and we want to be able to address that as best that we can, which means we can avoid these things and try and do our best in terms of living mindfully. It means that we can actually check to see if any of these things are causing problems through testing with your local ND. I know we do a lot of these types of testing things at my clinic. Not everyone necessarily does, but you could always ask. And we want to actually pay attention and be mindful of the sensations of our body. Not to freak out at every little thing. Sometimes things are transient and the body wants to experience something, go through something, and then it's over and it's fine. But if you have symptoms or different things that are coming up physically that are getting worse and worse, and you're pushing through to achieve those goals or to maintain the status quo or to make sure that you continue on the path of whatever you're doing, take that as a sign that you need something to change in order to maintain your health and in order to progress to good health in the future and to age well as well. And so what are the things that we can do? We can minimize your exposures And really, ultimately, that is going to be one of the biggest things. You can do all the bells and whistles, all of the treatments in the world, but if we are not avoiding exposures to begin with, this can cause a lot of problems. And you can only do so much to try and get rid of the stuff that's building up or the process that is needed to filter these things out if you're also not getting rid of the exposure. And so that is always, always the most important thing. When we get rid of the exposure, the body can often actually deal with all of these things on its own, but we need to get rid of the exposure. Something that's a little easier to do, something that's a little harder to do, especially with mold in our environment. Don't forget to consider your house and living space, your car, as we often can have little leaks in certain places, or it can get a little bit damp, and mold can grow very well in any type of fiber material, even that which covers the seats and usually the floors. And your workplace or any other place that you spend a lot of time, maybe a library or a school or wherever it is that you are. All of these places can actually harbor a lot of mold and harbor or give us then these exposures that we can be susceptible to in terms of our overall health. Next, we can actually pay attention to our food. You know that you can get mold toxins from certain foods. Maybe consult somebody who knows what they're talking about if this is something that you need more information on. And other things like gluten sensitivities or even celiac can actually manifest as physical issues or mental issues in terms of our anxiety and depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. There are cases that have been reported on where gluten has been stopped and then all of those symptoms have resolved. It's just something else to consider. And then we want to be mindful of all of the different chemical products that we use in our home for cleaning, in our cars, anything with scent in it, anything that we use as a body product as well. All of these things can have different chemicals in them that can stop your hormones from functioning as well as they should. And when our hormones are impacted, so many other things in our body are impacted. It seems little, but it's true. We may want to also consider how you store your food, and using plastic containers, especially with hot drinks or hot food, or styrofoam containers with hot drinks or hot food, can actually start to deteriorate the inner layers of that material, and then you're going to be ingesting it. Part of the problem is that we don't get rid of these things very well. But I, of course, want to leave you some practical solutions that you can do. So trying to improve and be mindful of the things that we ingest and things that we put on our body is one thing that we can do. The other one, if you want to actually check those products, there's a website called ewg.org. It's the Environmental Working Group, and they have a phenomenal database of all of the different things, different products, and you can look up, and they actually will give you a rating of how dangerous it is. Now, some of those things have really great material in them, and some of those things don't have fantastic resources, but it will give you that information too. It tells you the type of resource that it used and the quality of the data, and then it also gives you a rating. So it might have really, really great data and then the rating as well, or it might have not so great data and then the rating as well. You can make your decision from there. Other things that we can do to detox is to sweat. Sweating is one of the best ways to help get rid of some of these extra chemicals that we can be exposed to that aren't excreted through our urine and through our bowels. Sweating for at least an hour every single day can be really important. You could do a sauna, but even exercise or something else, being in a hot environment that gets your blood flowing and gets the sweat pouring, is really key. And so you take that as you will and use it however you can. Sweating is phenomenal. And if you have problems sweating, this can actually be another indication of your health status, and that actually should be addressed. Be sure to talk to your local people if you need any support with this. Thanks so much for joining here on Mental Fortress Mondays. We'll talk to you soon.